Well, it's funny. I mean, he talked today about that, and his general feeling was that Bradford was a guy that he thought could be very successful in the NFL. They spent weeks talking to the Rams back and forth, and they were trying to do the deal for draft picks. Kelly said, and that they were hoping to get Bradford and keep Foles. I don't know if that had happened, if they would have not re-signed Mark Sanchez, or what the plan would have been at that point. But he said that they were trying to make a deal that involved draft picks and not sending Foles to St. Louis. Finally, the Rams just said, "Look, we really want the quarterback. We want Foles," and it came to light later that the Rams were offered a first-round pick from Cleveland, it appears, for Bradford. So the Eagles were not negotiating in a vacuum there. There was some competition. And when they said they wanted Foles, it kind of all came together then, and the Eagles had the edge because they preferred the player to draft picks. So that's how it all came together. What they would have done with Nick Foles and Sam Bradford, I'm not really sure how that would have worked out.
Not to mention they already had Sanchez here too.
Yeah, well, they signed Sanchez after the talk had turned to trading Foles to the Rams. If they had not traded Foles, if they had just traded draft picks and gotten Bradford, they might have kept Foles and not signed Sanchez at that point. But I don't know what they would have done with both Foles and Bradford. That would have been very odd kind of situation. They would have had those two guys compete for a job or whatever. Bradford still has not been cleared to go on the field and do stuff. So, he's supposed to be ready for training camp, but until you actually see him and you can actually throw the ball and work with your receivers and do all the stuff that you need him to do, it's really hard for Chip Kelly to know much about him, firsthand.
Phil, obviously, Sam Bradford makes a lot of money. Foles does not. A lot of the conversation over the last day or so, it seems to be monetary driven. I mean, we wanted to keep LaShawn, but the money. We liked Macklin, not at that dollar. So why Bradford at 12.5 over Foles? Do you get the feeling that Chip Kelly feels that Bradford is a significant upgrade over Foles with that monetary difference?
I do. I really think so. That's the only conclusion you can draw from that. He's been very, clear about all the other stuff that, he's interested today. He talked about the money stuff with LaShawn McCoy again, and somebody said, well, he also signed Byron Maxwell. He's got a cap number like that. And Kelly said, well, for a cornerback, yes. You do have a cap number for you'll do that for a cornerback. You won't do it for a running back. In the case of Bradford, I mean, Lloyd was talking yesterday. It was kind of interesting. He said that when Andy Reid and his staff were rating quarterbacks the year that Bradford came out, that they had Bradford as the highest-rated quarterback since Peyton Manning came into the draft. So that was a decade before, and obviously Peyton Manning's been pretty successful. That's before Andrew Luck came along, so Andy wasn't working on Andrew Luck and comparing him to Bradford, but they had Bradford very high, and it sounds like that was the Eagles' kind of team thought about it. And then when Kelly got here, he clearly feels very highly about it too. It's what Bradford does is he's very accurate. He throws the ball quickly. He does all that stuff that coaches really like to see in their quarterbacks. And he was the Rookie of the Year in the NFL his first season. The injuries came later, and they had some changes in St. Louis in terms of offensive coordinators and stuff. A lot of stuff happened to kind of sidetrack Sam Bradford's career. But given the right situation and health, there is a chance that he could be what the Eagles are looking for in terms of a franchise-type quarterback. That those guys are really hard to find, and they're hard to get. It looks like the picture is kind of fuzzy on this Marcus Mariota kind of talk, but if you can get a guy like that, great. If you can't, you got to find another way to do it. And Bradford seemed like, in their mind, that kind of a guy, that level of quarterback, if he's healthy.
Phil Sheridan, ESPN.com, NFL Nation covers the Eagles, which has led you to be probably working crazy the last 2 days with all that is going on. An hour conversation with Chip Kelly today. They could have done an hour network special with Chip where he answers some questions. He doesn't want to answer others. But one thing that I thought was very evident was he values more players over one player. You know, I have LaShawn McCoy. He's great, but if you're going to give me two guys, that's better than one. He kind of indicated that he didn't think what he had behind McCoy was good enough, and that's why McCoy ran so much. But with that level of thinking then, Phil, would it surprise you to this day now if they traded a significant amount to move up to get one player?
It would surprise me somewhat because, I mean, that really is what he has said he wants. And it's fine if you believe that you're going to get a franchise quarterback and make that kind of a move. It's fine to do it as long as that's what you believe in. To say that you won't do it or that you think it's a mistake to do it and keep talking about why it's a mistake, to cost yourself a bunch of players in exchange for just one player, that doesn't seem like a good way to approach it. If you're really going to do it, I wouldn't spend a lot of time talking about why it's a bad idea. If I were the Eagles, we were asked Jeff Flory about that yesterday about quarterback position and why it's important to get the right guy, and if it's mortgaging the future to trade up for a guy is a bad idea. And Laurie said, well, if you mortgage the future and you get Peyton Manning or you get Donovan McNabb, then that's not a bad thing. If you mortgage the future and you get Ryan Leaf or Tim Couch, then it is a bad thing. So it's, if you believe that Marcus Mariota is going to be the next great NFL quarterback, and Chip Kelly very, very, very much believes in Marcus Mariota, then it is worth doing. It's worth, considering doing. But it just doesn't sound like, from what you read and hear and all in the tea leaves here, talking to Ken Wisenhunt yesterday of the Titans, they really like Mariota, and it's not out of the question. Most wasn't them. I would be surprised. The word coming from Tennessee was that they really like Zach Mettenberger and they want him to be their quarterback. And listen to Wisenhunt yesterday. I didn't get that sense from him. I mean, they played Mettenberger last year because they had him and he was there, and they like him. I mean, they think he's got potential, but it didn't sound at all like he was a guy that they were that sold on or that committed to. So, for one of these guys to get out of the top two is going to be pretty hard. It's going to be pretty hard for anyone to do.
Yeah, Phil. It seems that the way Laurie and Kelly both spoke, that they are willing to take a chance of the potential of Bradford at that particular position, more so than another position, because that position is so important. But then a guy asked Kelly today, is that the hardest position to try to start and find? And he's like, no, not really. I think putting the whole roster together is kind of tough. So it was almost like he downplayed how hard it is to get a quarterback, yet his actions say it's worth taking a risk if I feel this guy's significantly better, even though he has no track record to really suggest that he is a significant upgrade.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. I mean, it's kind of like a good analogy is when Kelly was looking at Mark Sanchez last year. He said that he knew Sanchez as a college player, and, he saw him on TV sometimes in the NFL, but he didn't spend a lot of time reviewing Mark Sanchez's New York Jets video and trying to analyze Mark Sanchez. He went back and looked at college tape and just tried to look at the Mark Sanchez that he remembered and try to figure that guy and project him into what the Eagles do. I think at the same level, that's kind of what he does with somebody like Bradford. It doesn't do Chip Kelly any good to see Sam Bradford play in Josh McDaniels' offense in St. Louis. That's not what he's going to run. In terms of looking at the guy and his skill set, what he does, how he throws the ball, what he's able to do, how quick he is at making decisions, that's what he's kind of looking at. And he sees in Bradford potentially, again, Andy Reid thought he was the best quarterback coming out since Peyton Manning, which means like the whole 2000s, there was nobody that that Andy Reid and Marty Mornhinweg had rated higher as a quarterback until Bradford came along. So that's a pretty high level of praise, and that's two varied offensive philosophies. Andy Reid's West Coast style offense and the Chip Kelly system is completely different. So there's two very different guys. Looked at Sam Bradford as a potential franchise-type quarterback. So that's the guy that the Eagles got, and that's who they believe that if he stays healthy, of course that's the big if with him, that he can be the kind of quarterback that takes you to the next level. That getting that quarterback is the most important thing you can do. It's not necessarily the hardest thing to do. I think what Kelly was answering more of the specifics of, is it hard for you to evaluate a quarterback? And Kelly said no. I mean, I think he enjoys evaluating quarterbacks. He likes it. He thinks it's something he does well. But, actually getting the quarterback, actually obtaining the guy, that's a little bit different. If he was asked the question that way, he might have said, yeah, that is the hardest thing. In the NFL, it's the rarest commodity, and it's the one you can't, you can kind of get around weaknesses in other places by your scheme or, with other players around a person. The quarterback, that guy's got to be, if that guy's your best player, you have a chance. And the Eagles have not really had that since McNabb's heyday, and that's been a while. So he still has a role where he can be of service to everybody involved. Take the middleman out, let Kelly be in charge of all personnel stuff, and have his guy that he answers to him. Instead of Kelly answering to the GM, have a personnel guy answer to the coach. That way the coach has final say in the draft. He brought that up a lot today. We were asking about this, stuff that happened last year in the draft, and he kept saying, I didn't have final say. I didn't. I mean, when it comes time to make a pick, one guy's got to say, this is our pick. And this year that'll be Chip Kelly, and we'll see going forward. I mean, there's no guarantee he'll be better at it, and we don't know that yet. But at least there won't be that breakdown of, as soon as the coaches get a guy under the old system, they got to the mini camps, and Marcus Smith did not look like the player that they wanted. They knew that right from the beginning. He barely ever saw the field from the very earliest camps. So, when the coaches don't have an investment in the player, then the guys are already kind of behind the eight ball. So, this will presumably work better. That even if they're not better at drafting players, at least the players that they get will be guys that they're comfortable with and that they already know a little bit about.
It seems, though, Phil, this is what they want to do, though, is draft players. They don't want to be active in free agency. Chip kind of mentioned we want to build through the draft. So it seems that this year, this was Chip finding his established players, and now, much like the Patriots and the Steelers and the Seahawks, those teams are not active in free agency. This is where Chip handpicked his guys, and now they should be a team that builds through the draft.
Yeah, that was kind of how I took all that too. This was a year to make corrections to the whole general makeup of the team. He also said that he felt that they were out of whack in terms of the salary cap, how much money they were spending on defense compared to offense. They're trying to correct that a little bit. Instead of having LaShawn McCoy count for $12 million under the salary cap, has three running backs count for that much. But if one cornerback counts for that, well, that's a defensive side guy. That's a guy that's you got to devote the resources on both sides of the ball and split it up in a way that you get enough offensive skill players and enough offensive guys, but also enough defensive guys. And so a lot of what he's trying to do here in this free agency period was kind of correct, things that he didn't think were working right. And some of this took him, a little time to come up with too. I mean, he came into the league. He inherited a team with a bunch of players on it, contracts and existing stuff. You can't, some guys will come up and blow things up the first day, and, Buddy Ryan did that back in the day. That was, of course, before the salary cap. But, that's hard to do, especially if you're not in the league, you're not familiar with the league. And this is a guy, he was very good at, recruiting guys out of high school. That's not different. That task doesn't do him any, that skill is not helping him at all in the NFL. So he's got to find, how the league works, get a feel for it, and start putting his stamp on it. And that's really what's happened in this offseason.
Phil, did you get any sense now what the draft might look like now that all this has happened and listening to Chip and Jeffrey over the last couple of days? I mean, it seems that this team might have a better understanding because he seemed like Earl Wolf was going to get a chance at safety. It sounded like Watkins might get a chance at safety, which kind of indicates that maybe an offensive player could be coming in the draft because he seemed like, they had some plans for what they want to do on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if, Howie Roseman's stated philosophy was, to take the best player available regardless of position, even if you have strength there. And Zach Ertz was a good example of the pick. Second-round pick. They had Brent Selleck on the roster. They had just signed James Casey as a free agent. Well, when Zach Ertz came up, he was the best player there. And in their grades, it was, it was a no-brainer for them. You take the guy, and you find a way to fit him in, and injuries and things happen. Guys, guys get hurt. Guys move on. Guys aren't as good as you hope. Whatever, opportunities will present themselves to good players. So that was Roseman's stated philosophy. Now it seemed like they got away from that last year. That's why it looked like Kelly might have had more say in the draft last year because the Marcus Smith pick was not what Roseman typically would do. As he basically defined his philosophy. So it's going to be interesting to see how Chip actually runs the draft. He's going to, he's looking at this draft, and he's said a few times that and a lot of people have said it, but Kelly also believes that the wide receiver position is very deep in this one. So when you get to that 20th pick, if they stay where they are and they're sitting there at 20. Do you take the best player regardless of position? Do you take, a targeted position that you really feel like you need to address? Some combination of the two. It's going to be interesting to see how he does it. And, there's not an obvious safety probably sitting at number 20, but that will probably be the biggest obvious need on the team. But if he feels like you can plug with that hole with somebody else who's kind of hanging around, but that a truly an elite wide receiver or somebody like that would benefit you for the long haul, and that's probably what they'll do.
All right, very telling stuff today from Chip and the day before from Jeffrey Lurie. For more, check out ESPN.com's NFL Nation with Phil Sheridan at Sheridan Scribe on Twitter. Thanks, Phil, so much. Always appreciate it.
Yes, same here. Enjoyed it. Thank you.